All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're at the top of the hour. Welcome to TechCon 2025. I'm Andy Harmon. I'll be your host for the application development and runtimes track. Hope you guys enjoyed the opening session. This year we have a lot of new stuff in our track to talk about. This is, I believe, the fifth year I've been the host of this track. And quite frankly, I can't remember a year that I've been more excited with the announcements, the new product developments, and the advancements that we're making to help our customers in the Java space. This morning I have Mark Habercorn joining me. He's our VP of runtimes for development, production, and product and design. I'm the Americas application development lead, and between the two of us, we're going to go through a preview of some of the deeper topics that you'll see throughout the week, and really kind of talk about our point of view on the Java space, some of the new capabilities that were announced as recently as last week, and some exciting new things that we feel are very relevant to our customers that are in the Java space. So with that, let me go ahead and kick off. I'm going to kick it over to Mark to get us started, and then between the two of us, we'll run through the next hour or so talking about the Java space. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Andy. Nice to meet you all virtually. I rejoined this team about a year ago, and we took a fresh look at our roadmap, and I think you'll see some new innovations here that hopefully resonate with your needs. I want to just sort of set the stage with one slide picture of our portfolio strategy. And you'll notice that this includes both IBM and Red Hat capabilities. We're bringing those two organizations and investment models closer together this year, as many of you may have seen in certain announcements in the media. But it's very much bifurcated or across existing Java applications and new Java applications. And if you look at the title of this whole session, it's around accelerating your application development. We recognize that something like 80% of most IT budgets are being spent on maintaining existing applications in one way or another. And so you can't necessarily free up enough resource to go after new applications unless you're doing some things in a new way on your old applications. And so we're going to start there, and then we're going to talk to you about our new Java applications. The overall story here is, very simply, on the existing Java application side, you need right now to address the Java 8 end of community support, which is targeted for November of next year, which means lots of open source libraries are dropping support for Java 8, and applications that depend on those therefore need to find a new answer. And there have always been answers across both IBM and Red Hat. The problem is that some of those answers were more expensive than you could afford for your entire application suite. So what we're doing is adding a couple other points on this curve of cost versus benefit, and we're going to explore those in much more detail through this session and in future sessions. But as you see, it's I call it the box of crayons, and sometimes you don't necessarily know exactly how much of the green crayon or the yellow crayon you need when you sit down to color your picture. And so we actually offer some very simple ways to purchase this that allows you to buy the whole box and then decide which crayon to use later on. So we'll talk about that later. On the new application side, it's basically Jakarta EE apps. Liberty is our recommended answer, and for new Kube native Java apps, Quarkus is our recommended answer. And again, we'll go through these in more detail, but many of you are aware of Liberty. It's Java 8 through 21 compatible, container microservices native. We now, with these box of crayons on the left, we now have SAS standalone and a TWAS add-on form factor for Liberty. So Liberty is the common thread through all the crayons you see on the left-hand side in different form factors. And I want to stress, it's a zero upgrade runtime. And as I talk to clients, in my reintroduction tour, so to speak, one of the common things I'm hearing is that as they've chosen non-JEE solutions for some of their apps, it's coming back to haunt them in terms of every year I need to upgrade, and that gets super expensive. Liberty absolves you of that need. Quarkus is a fantastic technology. It's obviously built open source. It's low memory consumption. If you compare it to Spring Boot, there's lots of comparisons you can look at as far as startup time, first time to request, memory footprint, memory consumption. It fares very well in those comparisons. In fact, we have 30% more open source contributions and Spring Boot, which is an objectively measurable stat. So I would encourage you, if you're not aware of Quarkus, to take a look at it. It's phenomenal technology and something that the IBM and Red Hat teams are working on together on our go forward strategy. So that's the whirlwind, sort of picture of the forest. Let's dive into some of the trees. So what we're going to talk about today at a very high level is you have a compelling reason to act on your existing Java estate. And if you do that the right way, you can reduce the costs spent on your existing applications to free up more resources to build your new applications. Now, as you actuate that strategy for modernizing, bringing into Java currency your existing application estate, you need to have a strategy which is maintain what you can, modernize what you must, and then build what your clients need with what you have available. We have an approach where we have skills, tools, and the box of crayons I just showed you that together can provide you a very solid roadmap and a very cost-effective answer to solving all of your needs. And then we'll touch on why IBM is your best partner. This is an interesting times in the enterprise IT space. I don't want to name competitors in this case, but there are a couple examples of them where if you look at the licensing tactics that they use, the pricing tactics they used, you have to wonder, as you pick your next 10 years, your partner for the next 10 years, who do you want that to be? And I would stress IBM and Red Hat and our reputation that we have in this space for embracing open source, for being a good partner, and for avoiding some of the tactics that would be considered predatory pricing or things of that sort. And so we want to stress that as well. So, Andy? So I'm going to let Andy take you through this piece of the presentation. So we basically have it divided up into how you optimize your existing Java portfolio to power your future innovation. And we'll talk about a little bit more about the options we have for new Java applications. So Andy, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. And so as Mark was saying, we're going to kind of focus on that kind of two-pronged approach, right? The modernization of your current assets and then development of your new. And really what we're focused on the modernization is addressing the technical debt issue, right? This is not new. This is just a flash from the Wall Street Journal last year, literally about a year ago, where it's estimated to be a 1.5 trillion with a T dollar problem, and that is managing, maintaining, and keeping up to date, keeping security exposures to a minimum, reducing failures, making sure that you understand the application, how it's working, et cetera, right? So everything that's built today, tomorrow becomes part of your technical debt, right? And as Mark mentioned, we know that a tremendous amount of our budgets are actually going towards keeping the lights on, right? As opposed to all the requirements and features and functions that your business is driving down to you for net new development. So that's really kind of the problem area that we want to address. Specifically when we look at Java, Mark already mentioned the Java 8 support, end of support coming next year, end of community support coming next year. But beyond just the support issue is the frameworks that many of us use to develop applications for this platform have already started dropping that support, right? So it's not just Java 8, but it's also the frameworks, Spring Boot, Kafka, Hibernate, et cetera, that you use on a day-to-day basis to build applications to deploy are already dropping that support, right? So support is certainly a big piece of it, but along with that also becomes a high target for security and compatibility issues, right? So Java 8 was actually released 11 years ago. So not only has it become steady state and a high usage from a footprint perspective, which also equates to a high target area. But there has been a lot of new capabilities. So as we move all the way to the right, our customers, and a perfect example of this, we had AI in the name of this session, and you'll hear this throughout the entire TechCon and whatever track you're attending. If you're looking to build in AI capabilities into your platform, those capabilities didn't exist when Java 8 was introduced. So the entire GenAI large language model manipulation APIs weren't even introduced into the Java language until 11 and 17. So these are all the challenges that we've recognized, that we've heard from you, and have driven to the portfolio that we have today, and that continues to grow. And I think you'll be pleased to see a significant improvement and a significant investment from an IBM perspective in listening to what you've been asking for and responding with the most comprehensive Java platform on the market. I'm not going to go through. You guys have access to these slides. I'm not going to read the entire slide, but just those are the challenges, and you can see the related impacts. One of the biggest being the productivity aspect, right? So if I'm managing or consuming an enormous amount of my resources, keeping lights on, keeping up to date, keeping security, et cetera, I'm not focused on being innovative in the market. And quite frankly, today, that's unacceptable, right? So in addition to that, I've got features and capabilities that are being asked of me that I don't have access to. I've got talent issues, so I've got a resource constraint, both talent and cost, that are keeping me or hindering me from building the new businesses that I need. So what we've got and what we'll talk about right now is the kind of shift in our methodology of modernization. And again, Mark already mentioned this, but maintain what you can. In other words, if I don't need new functionality, I'm happy with the way this is working. Can I find a way to keep that in the platform that it's in, not spend an enormous amount of additional money on that, and maintain it where it is? Modernize what you must. So, hey, where I need that new functionality, or where I'm using a framework that no longer supports the platform I'm deploying to, I need to take action on that. And so I must modernize that piece. But the combination of those two allows me then to build what I'm being asked for, right? What my business or what my customers are looking for, and be able to leverage not the technical debt, but the legacy assets that I've been maintaining and modernizing over time. So the question we get a lot is, and this is also kind of reflected in that shift of methodology of modernization, is why not just modernize everything? And the answer is that's not a feasible response, right? So many of our customers have somewhere between 500 and 700 applications running on their Java platform. And on average, it takes about 700 hours per application to modernize from, for example, Java 8 to Java 17, running on a different framework, virtual machines versus containers, et cetera. And so in order to modernize my entire application stack, I'm looking at a couple of years with a tremendous workforce, 75 full-time engineers to execute that. And we all know that nobody has that kind of time, nobody has that kind of resource. And so what we've done is, again, shifted that mentality to hey, let's lower the bar to get the return on the investment that we need as we move forward. Mark, do you want to talk to this slide?
Sure. So as we mentioned before, and as you sort of saw on the previous page, you have the ability to achieve a modernization of a larger footprint of applications with a smaller total amount of resource by combining several of these options as a sort of portfolio strategy. And so what we've done this year is provided more options on this list. It used to be the case that basically Liberty was the only option in IBM and JBoss and Red Hat. And so what we wanted to add were, some of these lower cost, higher time savings kind of options. So the first one is maintain Java 8, right? And we're looking at a couple ways. One is, extended support on Java 8 itself. And, we have intentions of supporting traditional WebSphere application server indefinitely. So well beyond the 2030 date that was announced as the minimum. So just want to make that clear. That was not the end date. That was the minimum end date. People took it as the end date. That was a mistake. So, I would like to be able to find a way to support it till 2040, to be honest with you. and we're looking at how far we can push that. But beyond that, there's also the third-party applications, the libraries, and so we're looking at a combination of working with third parties, working with our friends at Red Hat, working with our own teams on how do we provide support for some of those libraries. And that's something that we're working on throughout this year. And I'm hopeful to have something in first half, but in the next couple of quarters at the latest, an option around that, which would be well in time for the next year's end of support for Java 8. The next one is something we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on. This is probably the thing that people are most excited about so far, and that's around what we call more, the modernized runtime extension for Java. Think about it as basically taking your existing WebSphere application server environment and upgrading Java inside of it. You're also getting the benefits of a Liberty runtime, but you're not being forced to change any of your operations. So that means your WAS cell, your deployment manager, your clustering model, all that stays the same. And you just swap out your Java 8 runtime for a new Java 17 Liberty-enabled runtime. So that is either a fine place to stay, or it can be a stepping stone if your overall intention is that you want to modernize more fully to a Liberty runtime. You could do that in a two-step fashion. And that way you could at least get something in a suitable state for the next 2 or 3 years while you have, when you have enough resources available to get through your entire to-do list, your priority list. Of course, Liberty is still an option. It's a little more expensive to move to it because you do have to change some of your operational model from your existing traditional WebSphere application server state. There's a lot of benefit for that. So if you remember back to the box of crayons picture, it's a cost-benefit graph. And as you see, now these examples sort of fill out that entire list. The final one here in the blue is Enterprise Application Service for Java. That is a managed cloud solution. So think of it as SaaS, where we basically allow you to bring your EAR file, your application, and run it in a managed environment managed by IBM. So if you think about how to free up resources as far as people power, that's a great way to do it because you no longer have to do all the elements in the stack. You just worry about the application, and we do all the patching and the maintenance and that kind of stuff. So the overall message here is this total suite we call JSphere provides you a new set of options to allow you to more cost effectively address your entire application estate as opposed to only your top priority applications. If you go to the next slide, one of the things that we promised we'd talk about in the title for this was around how you can leverage automation and AI to help you with your modernization journey. And the way we do that is with a set of tools. Now, I'm going to show you a screenshot on the next picture of this to give you a picture for your mind's eye of what this actually looks like. But one of the most common pieces of feedback I get from customers is, I have these 600 applications and the people that wrote them are no longer here, or they're in way different roles and they don't remember what they did 20 years ago, because who does? And so you have this first problem, which is, what do I have? What is my starting point, right? And I don't mean just what applications do I have, but what shared resources do I have? What's going to break if I touch something? If I move this database to the cloud, what else is using it that's going to break? And how do I keep those things in sync? So the first thing is a state analysis. We have basically a scanner that will scan your entire environment, and I'll show you the screenshot of the output of that to understand your applications, their dependencies, and where they're running. The next step is, okay, now I know what I have. How do I get a migration strategy in place? So I need to understand what changes need to be made, right? Is it just simply the Jakarta namespace changes? Are there new libraries I need to adopt because things are out of support? Do I need to make changes to go to a new runtime? Well, depends on where I'm going from, where I'm going to. Our tooling will give you that picture. It gives you an assessment for how expensive those changes are. It can actually then automate several of them. In fact, we've seen upwards of 90% automation in some cases, and that's deterministic automation. That's not AI automation. The next thing, though, is AI automation. So you'll have some capabilities where you want to, either explain code. You don't know what the app does, and you need some explanation of certain pieces of the code, or you want to generate automated tests, and you don't know, like you're touching something that's a black box. How do you generate automated tests? We can do that with AI. And finally, the most obvious one with genAI being able to create, extensions bridges, mappings from one thing to another, you name it. Our watsonx Code Assistant is enabling you to do that in an automated way as well. So this sort of 3-step process, or 3-element process, not necessarily 3 steps, is a set of tooling which, when coupled with the new options we gave you on the previous slide, gives you a holistic approach to being able to modernize your entire estate. And again, remember, the overarching goal here is to reduce the amount of time and energy and money you're spending on keeping that stuff up and alive, and focus more of your energy on the go forward, which is the second part of this presentation. If you go to the next slide, I want to give you that picture for your mind's eye before I hand it over to Andy to take you through some of these options in more details. I believe in progressive disclosure in this series. So the assessment picture on the left-hand side, and it may be too small on this screen, depends on how big your display is. The assessment on the left-hand side is the result of sort of scanning your applications. Each of those rows in the table at the bottom is an application, and it starts with a very simple assessment. Is it simple, moderate, or complex in terms of the amount of energy required to modernize it? And it looks at different types of changes that need to be made. Are they changes to code, changes to configuration, things of that sort? And it makes an estimate on what's the actual cost to upgrade that application. So what you can do is assign priority. Say, this is a high cost, low benefit, so let's move that to the bottom list, or low cost, high benefit, move to the top. And you can systematically walk through your list of hundreds of applications in the right order. The right-hand side shows you a set of these pictures of what are your applications, what are your message queues, what are your databases, not just IBM. We can scan third-party things as well, and give you a picture holistically of your entire estate. And you can see what is shared, what is not shared, what's easy to move, what's risky to move in that way. On the left-hand side, I'll point you again, sorry to go back and forth. On the very right-hand side of the box on the left, you'll see something that says migration plan. There's 5 of them stacked there. If you click that, it gives you a view, and I don't have a screenshot in this presentation, my apologies. It gives you a view of what actually is going to need to be changed in specifics on that application, and it gives you some of the configuration files that you would need, like your WebXML, POM.XML, things of that sort. So it actually gives you the artifacts that will expedite your modernization. So if you wanted to move it to EasyJ, or move it to our SaaS service that we just launched, or you want to move it to modernize runtime extension for Java, it gives you the capabilities to do that in a highly automated way. Right, so without further ado, I'm going to let Andy take you through, the build out. Yeah, there's simple, moderate, and complex. I'll let Andy take you through a little bit more of the details on some of these options so you understand more of what they are. You can take questions on these if you want specifics answered here. There are also sessions on these new options later on that I would encourage you to attend, as you'll get a full session treatment on each one of these at that point. So Andy?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And as Mark was mentioning, actually the session right after this is going to talk about this tool specifically, and this tool being the Application Modernization Accelerator, which is kind of the base of our tooling that handles that 3-pronged approach, right, of discovery, strategy and analysis, and then actual execution of the modernization. So, this is an evolution of a tool that has been included in this platform, in our IBM platform for many years. It's an evolution of our tool that you're probably familiar with, which is Transformation Advisor. But what it does, it really expands the aperture on both sides of that tool, right? So not only do you have the ability to scan Java code and find the changes necessary to move it from your current state to whatever you've selected, but it also broadens that aperture by looking at queues, databases, and connections to other applications, i.e. the visualization that Mark just walked us through, right? So now I can see on a visual mapping that's also tied, and there's a lot more capability in the tool that you'll see in the sessions upcoming, to drill down into those to see what those connection points look like, how many other applications they might affect, that sort of features and functions. And again, the whole goal is to give you that holistic picture of my entire estate, so I can, in a more informed fashion, create that strategy. And by the way, the tooling also helps you create that strategy by looking at things like complexity, number of connections, things of that nature, as well as number of changes per application that need to happen, right? And then, as Mark mentioned, the third piece being the actual implementation of those code changes. That's actually a combination of the tooling that we just talked about. AMA actually has a set of recipes that allow you to, in simple and moderate cases, where we know what the change needs to be, the prescriptive change for each one of those steps, those recipes can actually execute those steps for you. Now, Mark also mentioned an additional capability from a true AI perspective, and that being Watson Code Assistant. Watson Code Assistant can now ingest the entire output from the AMA tooling, and in your coding style, in your corporate environment, make those changes that the recipes and the modernization tooling doesn't quite get to, right? So, as Mark mentioned, we've seen some of our customers achieve upwards of 90% of a full automation code, and that's going from a variety of as is, including as far back as Java 6. So Java 6, 7, 8, up to what we would consider kind of minimum bar today would be 17, to make that change, but also 21 and 23 and beyond, right? So that is all encompassed in the tooling that is also included in this JSphere suite of tooling, that again complements the platform choices, and that's where the aperture on the right hand side of the picture has broadened from the AMA tooling, and that's the targets, right? So targets from a transformation advisor included traditional WebSphere running in containers, so moving to WAS base, and traditional WebSphere moving to any version of Liberty on either virtual machines or containers, right? Now we've expanded that aperture even further to include the new more capability, which I'll talk about in just a minute in a little bit more detail, but you heard Mark mention that to start, where we've got the ability to deploy a Java 17 server within the operational model of traditional WebSphere. That's something our customers have been asking for years. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been personally asked, when's WAS 10 coming out, right? And the answer is still it's not. but we're giving, at least from our perspective and our customer feedback, this is the reason our customers were asking for WebSphere 10 is I need a new Java platform within the confines of the operating model that I'm familiar with and comfortable with in a traditional WebSphere. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit deeper about the more capability, the modern runtime extension for Java. Again, that's the ability to kind of merge both worlds of traditional WebSphere and Liberty. I'm deploying my application to a Java 17 Liberty runtime, but I'm doing that through the WAS admin console. And I'm managing that with WS admin scripts, and I'm following that with JMX monitoring. Everything that I'm familiar with and comfortable with from a traditional operating model still exists, and we'll be going through some examples of that later on this week as well. Modern runtime for extensions for Java, along with the capability that Mark was mentioning that we are actively working on. Now, I do want to just caveat this one. This is coming soon. As Mark mentioned, we're hopeful that it's sometime in the first half, but to avoid getting ourselves in trouble, we won't give you a date on it. But we are looking at taking some of those frameworks that are again, kind of on top of the support issues of Java 8, the frameworks that are dropping, support for or dropping the runtime of Java 8, taking those, hardening those, and then offering an extended support on those frameworks, not just the Java 8 platform, right? So obviously we have our own implementation. We actually have 2 implementations of Java, the Java 8 specification. Those are Timirin and Simru runtimes. But we also now are planning to include in that the actual open frameworks and support those going forward, so that our customers can, in cases where they are comfortable with where they're at, feature function wise, they can stay where they're at and not spend more money just modernizing that for technology's sake, right? So those 2 capabilities, modern runtime extensions for Java and open source library support, as well as everything that has been there from a traditional aspect, from a Liberty perspective, are all encompassed in our enterprise application runtimes. And this was an announcement that went out last week on Monday, on the 10th. That enterprise application runtimes, and there is a pathway for all of our WebSphere customers to get to this platform. This platform includes not only all versions of traditional WebSphere and Liberty, but all versions of the Red Hat runtimes as well. And it also encompasses the new capabilities that we just talked about, right? So the ability to deploy a Liberty server under the auspice of a traditional WAS-ND environment. And in addition to that, if some of you are familiar with, and I know we've had conversations over the last several years about a product called Cloud Pak for Applications. One of the true benefits from a Cloud Pak for Applications perspective was the ability to have deployment ratios for different products within that umbrella of options. And that also exists here in Enterprise Application Runtime. So this is really the best of what we have had, plus everything that we have come out with from a net new development and improvement of the platform, making this truly the broadest spectrum of options for our customers to make the most out of Java development, which, by the way, I know we kind of blazed over this to start with. Java is a tremendously important platform. So as a language, depending on whose report you want to look at, it's anywhere from second to fourth largest application development platform in the world. We personally, from an IBM perspective, have over 10,000 customers worldwide that have millions of applications running on the Java platform. So this is in my opinion, between this and potentially C++, these are this is the most important custom application development platform that exists, right? So obviously I said Java is anywhere from second to fourth. Some of those other things that are on the top list are things like Python and JavaScript, which yes, those are very prevalent. Those are not running your mission critical business applications that are keeping your company afloat, right? So this is, and I want to stress this significantly. This is our flagship offering as of Monday of last week. We have been building up internally to this launch for quite some time. We have heard our customers asking for specifically the ability to upgrade Java and stay, from an operating model perspective on the tooling and environments that they're familiar with. We're delivering that with this product. So very important, very exciting new announcement, which it's I've already had a number of conversations directly with our customers, and this seems to be filling some of the gaps that were keeping our customers from moving forward on the Java 8 to Java 17 move, and also giving them options that they didn't have before in staying where they're at. Okay. Mark also alluded to another offering, our SaaS offering. Our enterprise application service for Java. So this is a fully managed environment from an IBM perspective. Essentially, you give us currently your Java 8 or Java 17 application, and we run it for you, right? So, there's details beyond that I won't go into, and quite frankly, from a SaaS perspective, it shouldn't matter, right? So from a customer perspective, it literally is as easy as you give us your application and we run it, everything for you. We keep up to date from a security perspective, an update perspective from a CI/CD pipeline, direct from your application coding environment, as well as from our deployment of Liberty perspective. So tremendous amount of benefit to our customers. This went into a limited launch in December of last year. And if you have interest in this, please let me know. You'll hear a lot more about this as we move towards our Think conference that'll be in May. But please, this is a fantastic offering that has already gained a lot of notoriety and mention in the market. So if there's interest there, please let me know and we'll get you linked up. The last offering, as I mentioned, I know I've had conversations with many of our customers. Hopefully, you guys are not hearing about this for the first time, but our Cloud Pak for Applications offering is still out there on the market and available as well. But again, as I mentioned, EAR includes everything that Cloud Pak for Apps did, with the exception of the OpenShift container platform. There's reasons and benefits and drawbacks to that we can talk offline on. With that, Mark, let me turn it back over to you to talk about some of the net new cloud native development aspects.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. So, I'm sure you've all heard that there's a billion new applications that are expected by 2028. So this is not something that's falling off. People are building more and more applications. There's in some ways changing what kind of applications they're building, and you can sort of see on the right-hand side, different generations have driven increases in terms of number of applications over a certain wave. Like a new frontier comes around, it drives a new focus for IT teams, and they need to build applications to respond to it. And obviously the AI transformation wave is here and present. As you look at, and Andy touched on this, as you look at the application languages that you would use, the development languages, Java remains a top language for enterprises because it's GenAI friendly, first of all. If you think about Python, obviously lots of libraries exist in Python, but the actual code is a little bit problematic because much of the Python code that was used to build the LLMs, it's ambiguous what version it is. And there are different versions of Python that are incompatible. There are different versions of the API in Python that are incompatible. So if you have a mixture, you get sort of a garbage output of GenAI. And so for that reason, Java is very GenAI friendly. You can generate Java code well. It's type safe and robust, so you don't get these difficult to find highs and bugs that emerge in the most inopportune times, because you find more of that stuff in the development process. It's shifted left, I guess, relative to some of the more flexible languages like JavaScript or Python. And it's supported by a large ecosystem of management tools and existing investment. You already have skills, tools, automation, scripts, lots of applications and libraries in Java, and so that sort of tips the scale in the direction for a lot of enterprises on leveraging Java going forward as well, if possible. And so, with that in mind, what we want to do is, the common theme through all this, make it cheaper and easier for you to use Java for your new applications going forward. And as we said before, there are two ways to do this. You have JEE and you have non-JEE applications. We have an answer for both. If you go to the next slide, I'm going to ask actually Andy to walk you through the details on this one, but I want to stress the benefits of zero migration. If you're looking to free up more of your resource going forward to build new applications, that means you want to spend less on managing, upgrading, patching what you have today. And a lot of the other alternatives on the market require you to do a lot of exactly that. And if you do sort of an audit of how much change you've had to apply to a certain application, wherever it's running, I would guarantee you that in 99% of the cases, it's a non-zero answer. And so a zero migration answer is therefore a superior answer for these JE applications. But I'll let Andy take you through this and the other 5 value points that are on the slide.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And guys, there's actually a full session specifically targeted about these 6 benefits later this afternoon. So please join to go deep in. I'm going to cover them at a super high level, but later in the day today, we'll actually go through each one of these and give you some examples of what it is that makes up that benefit. There's also a blog that's linked at the top that is continuously updated. This is the part of the message that really hasn't changed. However, it seems when I talk to our customers, which I do almost on a daily basis, I'm amazed at how little knowledge there is around the product set of Liberty, right? So there are multiple versions of Liberty, all the way from Liberty Core to Liberty ND, and including also an open version of Liberty on this, right? So this applies to all of those, and I highly recommend coming back for the deeper dive on the 6 reasons why Liberty. But real quickly, so when we're talking about building net new applications, you want to do that on the most efficient platform that you can with the highest level of support that you need, right? So the first couple of benefits here are directed at cost factors, right? So there's a complete different architecture in the way we deploy Liberty versus traditional WebSphere and other application servers in general, which is what we call just enough runtime. So the server of Liberty actually relies on the application itself to tell it what all it's going to use when it runs. And that's the only aspect of the runtime or the implementations of the APIs that are specified in the language that Liberty pulls down, packages up with that application to deploy as a runtime. That results in a tremendous amount of disk and memory savings because I'm actually putting a much smaller footprint physically on the disk. And then when I start that server up, I have a lot less feature and functionality that's running, which equates to a tremendous amount of memory savings. In addition, the way we do that, and also with our tuning of our highly optimized kernel, it allows us to put a much more dense footprint into that runtime. So, and that's in comparison to, and we've got a couple of our our favorites here, Tomcat and Spring Boot. We see up to a 4x increase in density over some of the other options out on the workplace. So these all relate to a reduction in infrastructure costs, an improvement of sustainability. There's a lot behind this. Again, power consumption, cooling, etc. But at the end of the day, it's also a very highly performant platform, right? So that's kind of overarching theme number one. Second, and this is the one that Mark was just kind of talking about, is the zero migration aspect, but also a continuous delivery aspect, right? So this is not a kind of the waterfall methodology of building an application, rolling it out, and testing it, putting it in production, then bringing it back through the whole thing, right? This is a CI/CD pipeline. And again, it can support both models of development, but it's really around not just your application, but the way the actual application server works as well, right? We roll out a new version of Liberty every 4 weeks, and it's a continuous, non-impactful deployment on your application until you need it and want it. And so that kind of relates to the top one that I talked about, the just enough runtime. That's how we're able to implement that, right? So the application says, hey, this is when I want this API or this class, the implementation of, and I'm going to use that. If I'm not utilizing that, Liberty is not pulling it down, packaging it up in the runtime that it deploys, right? So I can actually support multiple versions of the same API because I know I'm not going to have a conflict because of that. The application is going to tell me which one it needs. All of that goes into a lower administrative cost and also a vast improvement in security. This is something that we've seen over the last, I would say, 4 to 6 years now. The CVE volume has just gone through the roof, right? The security vulnerabilities and the amount of attacks and hacking that's been happening is just on an exponential uprise. And think about it in the concepts of, if I'm only including the implementations of what my application needs, and that might be 2 to 5% of what's available on the language platform, I've just limited my security exposures by 97%, and that's a very powerful aspect from a securing perspective. Last thing that I'll talk about real briefly, guys, Liberty was built from the ground up in 2012, specifically targeted at cloud native development, right? And at that time, it was service oriented, but replaced service with microservice, and you're kind of the same methodologies, right? So we are highly optimized, and we welcome performance evaluations against whatever you're using today, including, by the way, our traditional WebSphere footprint, right? We absolutely, if you're looking to shift to a Kubernetes platform, we absolutely knock the socks off of every other platform out there from a performance perspective, from a stability perspective, and most importantly, from a support perspective, right? So, you really have to think these days as you start leveraging some of the open frameworks and potentially open platforms. When you have an issue, who are you going to call, right? As not Ghostbusters, but it may seem like that if you're in an open community, right? So that really factors into the aspect of choosing the right platform for deploying your applications to. And then we have done a lot to improve the developer experience, and so one of the biggest challenges is keeping developers happy and interested in the job they're doing, and that's been a primary focus of ours for the last several years as well. So again, a lot more detail in this later on in the week. Actually, I'm sorry, later on today. Please join us back. I'm going to flip it back over to Mark and have him talk about the same type of a concept from a Quarkus perspective. So Mark, back over to you.
And again, just reminding you that what he just took you through is our recommendation for JEE type of applications. For non-JEE applications, Quarkus would be the recommendation. And there are a couple options in the market here. We believe that Quarkus is the best simply based on some of the performance numbers that we've gotten. So fast startup and low memory, that's quantitative. And if you do the comparison, which I'd invite you to do, it does it in a faster way than other alternatives with a lower memory footprint. One of the things that developers love about it, outside of the performance characteristics, speeds and feeds, is the live reload capability. So you get instant code changes and continuous testing. So your debug cycle is reduced. You don't have to go restart, application servers or something like that. You simply make a change to the code and reload your browser, and it's there. The APIs are friendly as you'd expect. It's Kubernetes native, so supersonic subatomic Java is the tagline for Quarkus. It's Kubernetes native, making cloud native development something that's very simple to do with Quarkus. And there is a dev UI. We're actually going to show you a little animated. If you can go to the next slide here. Actually, sorry, before you do that, if you go back, so just to give you an idea, because I'm surprised that some people haven't heard of Quarkus in certain cases. If you look at a graph of activity in the open community of Quarkus versus some of the alternatives, Quarkus obviously started later, but it has climbed way faster and has actually exceeded, in the case of open source contributions, things like Spring Boot, which have been around for a long time. That's happening because there's a recognition that the startup times, the memory footprint, and the developer friendliness, developer joy, as the team calls it, is robust. And so I would invite you to take a look at this if you're not aware of it already. you see that only 58% of the PRs, sorry, only 42%, do my math, of the PRs are Red Hat. So the majority, almost a super majority of the open source contributions are by non-Red Hat, which means that this is being driven by the community at large, not community under the umbrella of a corporation. And I think that's also reflected in terms of the developer joy that we hear from people who are using this. It's built by developers for developers. If you go to the next slide, then just to let this sort of animation loop through, what you get is a seamless dev experience. You get a live reload that makes development and debugging much faster and easier. You get this web-based interface that provides a dashboard that's pretty user-friendly to inspect and manage your Quarkus applications. You get insights on extensions, so you can see which extensions are installed, their configurations, their runtime status, and you get interactive features. So you have triggering actions like database migrations, testing your REST endpoints, and viewing logs. So it's a very simple product to use. I've had demos of 5-line Quarkus applications developing AI capabilities in the last week. Actually, they were pretty compelling. So I'd encourage you to take a look at this if you haven't seen it before. It could be a great tool in your arsenal. So go to the next slide. I want to touch on why IBM. We said earlier that as you're picking your path forward at this juncture in time, you've got to look at, in 20 years, you'll be looking back at the decision you made now at how you set the table for those 20 years, and you don't want to be kicking yourself. You want to pick a partner who's going to treat you fairly, who's going to be there for you when you need it, make sure you're successful. And I think these 4 points are important to consider as you decide who is that partner for you. And when I say IBM, it's IBM and Red Hat together. So IBM is the leader in enterprise Java. You have thousands of applications, thousands of enterprise products, millions of enterprise Java applications running at scale. So it's out there, right? This is not new. You have IBM's commitment to open source. Over history, IBM has been among, if not the top contributors to open source. We've been very active in the foundations of Java and JSRs. Very open, active in the community, Eclipse Foundation. We are committed to open source. Red Hat obviously joined IBM largely because we had aligned ideals on this notion of open source at the core. And so we'll continue on that path. Cloud native and AI applications, you see innovation, right? You see innovation in terms of your existing applications and in terms of your new applications, and we're continuing to invest. In fact, IBM and Red Hat are collaborating going forward to build one answer for new applications in the non-JEE space on top of Quarkus, borrowing from some of the Liberty technology we just told you about. And then I want to stress, IBM is a proven fair Java partner. You have increasing licensing and support costs that come out of the blue. They surprise you. You don't want that. IBM has a history and a reputation of not doing that, and I would just ask you to consider that as you decide your path forward. Just to give you a couple case studies, you have, and I'm not going to take you through all these in detail, I'll let you scan it. I want to stress that actually the tooling that Andy shared earlier, so the IBM CIO office is leveraging the application modernization assistant and the Watson Code Assistant for modernizing their existing applications. And I want to stress that this is a team that includes people like Kyle Brown, who's an IBM fellow, who was one of the founders of WebSphere Application Server and was involved in the lab services team, so probably knows many of your applications, depending on how long you've been in your spot, maybe even better than you, depending on whether he worked on them. So he's a wealth of knowledge in this space, is my point. He has a team of people who have modernized something like 200 applications already. And as we often do in IBM, we try to use our own tools first to make sure that we would use them before we ask somebody else to consider it. And their team, despite having that level of skill and that level of experience, 200 applications, saved 99% of the time. 99. They only had 1% left of the time it took them to discover their application and map all the externalities, all of the dependencies. So I want to stress how compelling that tool is, or was for us. And that's despite having, wizards of WebSphere involved. We've also had the Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina and Power VM using some of these capabilities we discussed today, and I'll let you explore those further. So next steps. What I would suggest is that as you think about what we've shared here, obviously your immediate next step would probably be to attend some of the sessions on the options that we shared. So you have Enterprise Application Service for Java, which is the SaaS, as a service solution. You have Enterprise Application Runtimes, which is the customer managed or self-managed solution set, and that includes your modernized runtime extension for Java, and it includes Liberty as well as your traditional WAS and those sorts of things. And then Watson Code Assistant, which allows you to do some of the genAI code manipulation that you'll need as well as you modernize. So I would encourage you to dive deeper into those sessions throughout this day. But beyond that, what we can do is give you a detailed one-on-one briefing and take you through the pieces that are most relevant to you. We can take you through our roadmap, do a demo for you. We'd love to sign you up to help us shape the future direction on this. So one of the things that I've put in place is we commit on 2 weeks, we plan on 90 days, and we ideate on a year. And that means that at the end of a 90-day horizon, we have the ability to pivot pretty rapidly. And we would encourage you to get involved in our roadmap planning with us so that we can make sure that we're accommodating your needs. We could do a hands-on tech sales-led proof of technology. So if you want to sort of see this in your environment, see with some of your applications, we can do that. Now, there's obviously a limit to how many of those we can do, and it takes a little more time, but we can do that for you. And then, of course, you can get started on your application modernization strategy by getting an output of a scan of one of our tools as an example. And our tech sales team is standing by and able to help you through that and provide you a recommendation. So the next slide is the last slide. It's a thank you. Appreciate your time. I think we have 3 minutes left, so I will scan the questions in the chat. I don't think there are any that are unanswered at this point. So Andy, any closing words?
And Mark, as you monitor the chat, just a reminder, you'll see a survey pop up in your chat window. Please let us know. We always are looking for ways to improve our messaging, making sure that you get what you want, how you need it. So let us know your feedback. Also, a quick reminder: if you've not been in a TechCon conference before, at the end of each day we'll have an office hours where the speakers from throughout the day will be available to answer questions. So if there's something that popped up and it hits you later, or you see something in one of the later sessions, feel free to join up back into that end of day office hours and ask away. It's just a time set aside for conversation. So really appreciate your attendance. I will be kicking off the rest of the sessions throughout today, tomorrow, and Thursday. I hope you guys are as excited as we are to have some really new, fresh topics to talk about. In my opinion, this is one of the first times that we've really moved the needle on changing the options that are available to you. And so hopefully that's reflected here. The next session, as I mentioned earlier, is going to dive a little bit deeper into the AMA tool that we talked about earlier today. And then after that, we'll actually go into the WCA tooling. And after that, the six reasons why Liberty. So that's kind of our roadmap for today. Please feel free to let us know how we've done, take that survey, and then join us in the next session.